Much, Ross. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Together with City Mayor of Salford, Paul Dennett, who leads on housing and homelessness for Greater Manchester, we're presenting today Places for Everyone, which is the spatial plan of 9 Greater Manchester councils, a plan for good homes, good jobs, more livable communities, cleaner, greener Greater Manchester, or all over the 9 districts that are part of it. The places that will recover fastest from the pandemic are those that are clearest about where they are going. It's absolutely clear to us that we must put health at the heart of Greater Manchester's recovery from this pandemic. You will have all seen a week or so ago the analysis of Professor Sir Michael Marmot on the impact of the pandemic on Greater Manchester, which revealed a higher virus rate and death rate from the virus here, 25% above England average. And of course, we have to respond to that with a plan that builds resilience and health across all of our communities. Health is built in homes and communities, not in hospitals. And what we have got to do as a city region is develop plans for a cleaner, greener Greater Manchester with more livable communities where we've got good homes and good jobs for everybody. And what I would encourage everybody to do is to consider this plan alongside the plans that we've recently brought forward for a clean air zone in the city region, covering all 10 of our districts. Also, our plans to be zero carbon by 2038, because all of these plans are complementary, including, of course, our plans for a London-style integrated public transport system. We are serious about building for the home rather than building for the public transport rather than building for the car. And this plan, Places for Everyone, takes that forward. If I could just say something about cleaner and greener. I did mention our plans for the clean air zone a moment ago. We are determined to change the situation where some of the poorest kids in the poorest communities are breathing in the most polluted air. And that is why we are pressing ahead with plans for the country's largest clean air zone. But we want our communities to be greener too. So to say something about that, firstly, we've made a major reduction in the green belt take from the original Greater Manchester Spatial Framework in 2016. It is now a 60% reduction compared to what we had then. It is the radical rewrite that was promised. Of course, we are still bound by government housing targets, and the government has recently increased its housing requirement on city centre Manchester. So we have to work within that framework. But we've done a huge amount to listen to what people have told us and to remove greenbelt sites from the plan as much as we are able to. And Paul will say something more in a moment about the fact that 90% of the new homes envisaged in the plan will be built in urban areas, and that is a big change that we've been able to make. I also just want to emphasise that it isn't just about protecting green space, and obviously the existence of a plan protects the green belt from speculative development. We're also serious about enhancing the space that we've got. So I'm confirming today that Greater Manchester will soon bring forward a new green spaces fund. This isn't for the big green sites. This is for those pocket parks that people have found so valuable throughout the last 18 months, and giving communities the ability to bid for grants to improve those places that they've used, to show them a little bit more TLC, to clean them up, to make them more pleasant places to be, giving all of our communities access to decent green space. is part of building a healthier Greater Manchester, and the Green Spaces Fund will contribute to that. But also we're looking at how we create new green space for communities to use. So I would point people to the Mayfield development, where we'll create the first public park in city centre Manchester for many, many decades, 6.5 acres of lawn, meadows and biodiversity, a fantastic development that will improve life in the city centre. I would also point to the Victoria North regeneration programme, where there is a plan for a 113-acre river park connecting the 7 emerging neighbourhoods of the project, opening up the Irk River Valley for the first time in decades through high-quality public park and green space alongside new walking and cycling routes. Of course, in Paul's area in Salford, we have the 150-acre RHS Bridgewater, which has been a huge enhancement to the city region. And in Oldham, we're backing the Northern Roots project, the country's largest urban farm and eco park, again, improving green space in all parts of the city region. So we are doing what we can to back up the promise of a greener Greater Manchester. But we also recognise that we also need to give people build the right homes in the right places, and that is what Places for Everyone seeks to do. I've made a commitment that we will shortly bring forward a plan for 30,000 homes for social rent in Greater Manchester that will be zero carbon too, and we will bring that forward within the year. That plan obviously is very complementary to Places for Everyone, because that enables the locations to be found for those homes to be delivered. And that is another way in which we've responded to what people have told us over recent times. So this is about Greater Manchester setting out its vision for the future, with homes that people can afford, building those homes for public transport rather than the car, revitalising our town centres. We will look to build on the success of the Mayoral Development Corporation in town centre Stockport, which is bringing through 3,500 homes, and look to repeat that model in other parts of the city region. We're already talking about a Mayoral Development Corporation in Middleton, but other places potentially too, so that we put new energy into the regeneration of our towns. Of course, all of this needs to be linked by a digitally connected Greater Manchester and a city region where public transport is reliable and affordable. And we will obviously be making huge progress on our plans for the B network in the coming period. So if you look at it across the board, what you can see here is a series of complementary plans, which is going to change the way in which people live, the way in which people move across Greater Manchester in the coming period. It is a vision for a zero carbon city region, whereby rising faster to the climate crisis, we also solve the jobs crisis, the housing crisis, and make this a better place to live for everybody. So we're pleased to publish this again today. It is the right moment to crack on as we come out of this pandemic, because as I said at the start, the city regions that will prosper the most will be those that are clearest about where they're going in the coming period. We have done the work. We are putting forward our plans today for a further round of public consultation beginning in August. And obviously we want to continue to listen to our communities as we build back fairer from this pandemic. But that's enough for me for now. I will be turning to you for your questions shortly, but I'm now going to hand over to the City Mayor of Salford, Paul Dennett. Paul.
Thank you very much, Andy. As you've rightly highlighted, this is a long-term plan for Greater Manchester. It's a plan for jobs, new homes and sustainable growth. And it's importantly a plan for building the right homes in the right places. And as you've also highlighted, that connectivity and environmental sustainability across our villages, our towns and our cities is very much at the heart of this strategy. And this strategy also seeks to play our part in solving and tackling the housing crisis, building on the last 5 years of of your mayoralty, you know, with Bed Every Night, Housing First, Social Impact Bond, and thinking increasingly how we can work across the 10 local authorities in that prevention space. Also supported by transport infrastructure, obviously proposals around the future of Metrolink, active travel route proposals is very much at the heart of this strategy, and accessible railway stations. For me, this plan protects the green belt from what we often refer to as unplanned development, planning by appeal, ensuring that future development within the city region isn't dictated to us, but we actually strategically plan for it. As you've rightly highlighted, Places for Everyone reduces the green belt impact by 60% when compared with the 2016 spatial framework. It is indeed a radical rewrite. And also importantly, 90% of the new homes we'll be building within Greater Manchester will be built within urban areas. And that is a fantastic achievement. And anyone who's been following the Brownfield Housing Fund money allocations will also note that we've committed £97 million to 57 schemes across 2 tranches to build a minimum of 5,500 homes on brownfield sites. 2,000 of those will be affordable. So for me also, this is a strategy to continue to lobby and influence government to genuinely deliver on rebalancing the economy, on levelling up. We're grateful for the money we've received to date, but we need to do so much more to deliver on our brownfield preference policy as articulated in this strategy. Importantly, economically, what we're trying to do with this plan is rebalance the Greater Manchester economy, maintaining that southern competitiveness within the city region, whilst also stimulating growth in the northern parts of the city region. Needless to say, this is going to be really important as we increasingly think about how we recover from COVID-19. Planning for our future, in my opinion, is probably even more important now than it's ever been. And using this as a plan to lobby and influence government in that direction is very much part of our thinking. This plan also doesn't sit alone. It sits alongside our local industrial strategy, our digital strategy, our good employment charter, because we want to deliver quality jobs here in Greater Manchester. The brownfield preference policy speaks to all of the work we're doing on town centre regeneration across the city region, especially in places like Stockport through the Mayoral Development Corporation. Infrastructure, both physical and social, is very much part of our thinking here, and we have the infrastructure framework and strategy now within Greater Manchester. Delivering carbon neutrality by 2038 is also imbued within this agenda. Net zero carbon homes, you've already mentioned, we want to build those from 2028, and also delivering our Greater Manchester Clean Air Plan, which we've received, I think, 120 million from central government to upgrade to a cleaner and more compliant vehicles for the future. Importantly, the housing strategy seeks to deliver 50,000 affordable homes over the period of this plan. And I know off the back of your recent election campaign, you've now, translated those 30,000 social rents into 30,000 net zero carbon social rented homes, again, raising the bar. And also, we've created a retrofit task force because we're acutely aware that some of this work isn't about the new homes we build, but the housing stock we actually have. You also highlighted, Mayor Burnham, that this also sits alongside much of the work happening in places like Oldham with their Mills strategy, all the stuff happening in Stockport through the MDC. And it's about knitting all of that together in one plan for the city region. Importantly, active transport is also at the heart of this because we see that as critical to meeting our 2038 carbon neutrality target. Greater Manchester is already committed to delivering 100 kilometres of high quality cycling and walking routes by December of this year. Currently 108 schemes with a combined value of £500 million is underway. So great achievements in that space. In terms of the consultation itself, there will be a joint committee on the 20th of July. And in a sense, what today is the publication of the papers for that joint committee. Then we'll move into district approvals between the 20th of July and the 5th of August across the 9 local authorities that are party to this plan. Then following that, there'll be a period of consultation, which will run from the 9th of August to the 3rd of October for a period of 8 weeks. But if you take the 12th of July when the papers are published, there's actually a 12-week period when these papers and this information will be in the public domain. Following that consultation, we'll be submitting it to the Secretary of State for examination, and we envisage doing that in January 2022. And then we expect the examination to take place between 2022 and 2023, with adoption being in 2023 at some point. We've not got precise dates on any of that at the moment because that's yet to be determined, but we expect it to happen within those years. So this is the Places for Everyone plan. This is going out for consultation. We encourage residents across Greater Manchester to get involved in this. Obviously, the next point is the joint committee and then approvals from all of our councillors across the 9 local authorities through their full council. So I'll leave it there, Mayor Burnham, and thanks for inviting me.
Great, thanks very much indeed, Paul. And Ross, I think we'll ask you to lead us through colleagues from the media's questions today.
Thanks, Andy. If colleagues in the media could indicate if they want to raise a question by using the raise hand function. Once they've done that, I'll be able to enable your microphone and you can ask your questions. So you just hit the raise hand button. Unless there are no, oh, there we go. Jennifer Williams. Jen, you should be able to unmute yourself now if you just say who you are and where you're from.
Hello. I obviously haven't had a chance to look at the new document yet, so it's a bit difficult to kind of ask questions about the detail of that. But just a couple of things about the things that you mentioned then. On the Pocket Parks fund, how much is going to be in that? And have you any idea sort of how many sort of schemes you're looking at? Is that something that that councils will bid to, or is it more a kind of grassroots community thing? Could you just tell us a bit more about what that might look like as a programme? And just on social housing, I know you've got ambitious targets for social house building, obviously over the next 5 or 10 years. How are you anticipating that that's going to be funded? Because obviously Greater Manchester's wanted to build more social housing for a long time, hasn't it? And doing so at scale is expensive. How are you sort of expecting to meet that target, and how are you going to do that alongside the continued existence of right to buy, assuming that the government doesn't suspend it, which there's no signs that they're going to? Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jen. I think Paul probably will want to come in on the second part of that question, but thank you for your interest in the Green Spaces Fund. There's a report out today actually from the University of Manchester, who've been conducting in-depth research with older people and some of our more deprived communities, and it brings it out very strongly actually how much people have depended upon having access to green space over the last 18 months. But as we know, in parts of Greater Manchester, it's sometimes not high quality green space, and it could be so much better. So the Green Spaces Fund is a £5 million fund, and the team here at the GMC are just working on the details around it at the moment. The intention is for it to be community driven. So often it will be in partnership with the council, because it would be typically the case that the council might own the land in question, or certainly have influence over it. So, but the idea is that this would be, I wouldn't say necessarily small grants, but we're talking of double figure thousands, or probably up to 100,000, whereby money can be drawn down, and obviously working with communities, an improvement plan for those spaces brought forward, and and modest investment, if you like, made just to improve them. But I think, that has happened to a degree anyway over the last 18 months. We have seen communities taking much more interest in local green space, and this is intended to take that on to the next level. But what we would be doing is bringing forward precise details of how people can access this fund shortly. Paul, I think you probably want to pick up the question about homes for social rent, because obviously you've championed the need for Greater Manchester to become much more serious about building homes that people can afford. But just to say, Jen, I've asked the team here again to develop a plan that we will bring forward and we'll put before you within the year of the mayoral election, and I want that to be sooner rather than later. And as part of that, it will be looking at our funding options as to how we can fund the homes, working with our housing providers, and that might include borrowing potentially. It also might include recycling funds from the Housing Investment Loans Fund. There's a whole range of ways in which we will be looking at how to make those homes happen. But as Paul is indicating, I added an extra hurdle for Paul when I chucked in the word zero carbon. But it's important to see this, though, as also a sort of catalyst for kind of bringing on the homes of the future more quickly. That's how I see it. Because obviously, coming out of the pandemic, we've got to be more serious, not just about the quality of the homes that people have, but how much it costs to run those homes, combating fuel poverty as part of it. So it is a really important kind of bringing forward of the future is what we have in mind here, and that's why we've set such a high ambition for them. But Paul, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andy. I think it's a really good question. Obviously, we've got a national affordable homes programme which is overseen by Homes England, so getting access to that and getting access to funding, and also encouraging our housing associations across the city region to be applying for social rent grant is going to be absolutely critical to delivering on this agenda. I think also importantly is the relationship with land, and you probably saw Andy committed to a land commission for Greater Manchester. That isn't something that's new in some respects, if you're familiar with previous devolution deals within Greater Manchester, but ensuring we get public land being used in a way that we'd like to see to tackle the housing crisis is something that's important to us. So I think what we see with the Land Commission is people like Network Rail, NHS, the Ministry of Defence, whoever own land, it's about lobbying and influencing to actually work with those landowners to deliver truly affordable homes within the city region. The reason why that's important is because there is a tension there between often departments or executive agencies wanting to maximise their capital receipt, having an impact on the viability appraisal then that comes forward when schemes are being built out, and then actually what that means for delivering truly affordable housing. So the Land Commission, I think we envisage as being a vehicle to try and gain some more traction over all of that. What I would say, though, is in Salford, in my local authority, what we've done is we've created a development company which sits outside of the housing revenue account, and we're using our land assets in the city. We're also using commuted sums from other developments that are taking place in the city, as well as unsupported borrowing through the Public Works Loans Board, for example, to actually create that cash to build truly affordable homes. So some of this is about encouraging the other districts across Greater Manchester to consider those sorts of things as well. But I do think there's a really important lobbying and influencing piece in all of this. I mean, Andy's absolutely right. At the moment, the grant rates through the Affordable Homes Programme are nowhere near where they need to be to actually deliver net zero carbon homes. So, lobbying and influencing MHCLG and Homes England on this agenda to deliver on our vision for 30,000 social rented net zero carbon homes is absolutely going to be at the heart of this agenda. So hopefully that gives you a feel and a flavour for the differing aspects of all of this, but there's certainly going to be a lot to do to deliver on that target.
Thanks, Paul. We've got at the moment Kevin, Tom and Andrew with their hands up, but if anybody else does want to ask a question, please do stick your hand up. I'll go to Kevin. Kevin, you should be able to unmute yourself, and hopefully this week your technology works. If you go ahead and speak, Kevin. If you just want to send me your question again, I can deal with it. We'll get there. I'm going to go to Tom. Tom, if you should be able to mute yourself now. If you just say who you are, where you're from, and ask your question.
Hi, yeah, Tom at Hits Radio. Just first of all, you mentioned about rebalancing the economy, with a particular focus on sort of northern parts of the region. I was just wondering what exactly that would look like and how that would be rebalanced. And I guess whilst we've got you as well, of course, there's a big announcement tonight. Just how crucial are those next 7 days for Greater Manchester, given it is still an ERA and in a week's time people could be packing into nightclubs?
Thanks, Tom. So we are serious about addressing our own north-south divide within the city region, and Places for Everyone is the vehicle by which we do that. The single most important strategic site within the plan is the Northern Gateway site. It is a prime site for Greater Manchester, where we have high ambitions for the jobs that will come to it. It's not the case necessarily that this will be for logistics or warehousing. This is a site that we aim to bring the jobs of the future alongside the homes of the future I was talking about before to Jen. This is about jobs of the future, harnessing our expertise in advanced manufacturing, materials. So we've got very high ambitions, but it is linked also, though, to the MDC idea in Middleton. What I am looking at is options to extend Metrolink so that it can serve both the new Northern Gateway site, but also deliver on the commitment to bring Metrolink to Middleton. And we're just looking now seriously at two options which would deliver on that. Both, I have to stress very clearly, Tom, protect Heaton Park, so there's no loss of green space there, and I don't think I would be forgiven if there was. So this is about a plan that that obviously can be supported more broadly, but it's about linking the big employment sites of the north of Greater Manchester to the potential for town centre regeneration in the area. As well as then bringing that transport connectivity, which we've seen is so crucial to other parts of the city region when you're building both homes and prosperity and more livable communities. So, I mean, there are other examples I could point to. Paul mentioned the Oldham Mills strategy. It's just worth saying that I've met Historic England, and we have got a very good conversation going with them now about that. I've got high hopes for that too, actually, in terms of what may come of it. So this is a very much a serious intention, and the very existence of a spatial plan allows us to get that strategic investment behind the sites that we're identifying here, so that we can genuinely level up, if you like, the north of Greater Manchester with parts of the south, and that's at the heart of this plan. In terms of your second question, obviously we are we'll be watching closely what the Prime Minister says when he addresses the nation later today. I've noticed a shift in the language of ministers over the last 24 hours towards an expectation that face coverings will be worn on public transport. And if that is confirmed, it is progress, I think, on where we were last week. But we would say it still leaves room for confusion amongst the public. It's not clear enough what happens if people don't meet the expectation to wear a face covering. And if the government are strengthening the language, recognising the public opinion on this issue, it just seems to me to say, well, keep the status quo. There's no reason to change. If you're saying that you're expecting everyone to wear a mask on public transport, leave it as a requirement. That is clearer for everybody. And it actually will give confidence to people who are worrying now about July the 19th and whether they will encounter a very different scene when they're on a tram travelling around or on a bus. People, as I said last week, who are travelling by public transport for their chemo or their dialysis or have another underlying health issue that puts them at risk will not see July the 19th as Freedom Day. It will be Anxiety Day for many of them because they will fear what they will find when they are out on the transport system. And I just think the government can help everybody at this moment in time to say, look, they're sticking with the broad thrust of what they announced last week, and we would agree with that, but being sensible about the requirement on face coverings, certainly on public transport. You could even argue in essential retail as well, given that many people have no choice but to go into those places. So we'll wait to see what happens later today, Tom. It is an important announcement. We've made our position clear. I think it's backed by other mayors and actually by the public as well. And at this moment in time, I think the government will be unwise to run ahead of the public. It's very important to keep the public with this roadmap. And we hope, it seems the government has taken the point on board, but I think we need a full solution, if you like, rather than the half solution, which is currently being suggested. Thanks, Andy. Paul, did you want to come in on any of that at all?
No, I think Andy did a good job there.
Okay, we're going to move to Andrew. Andrew, you should be able to unmute your microphone now. If you just say who you are and where you're from. Thank you. Andrew, you need to unmute yourself. I'll just give you a wee second to do that. Should be up the top right hand of your screen. Nope. Andrew, if you keep having a wee look, I'm going to let Niall come in and ask his question, but you should just be able to unmute yourself in the kind of normal fashion. Niall, if you can unmute yourself, say who you are and where you're from, please.
Yeah, Niall Griffiths from the Manchester Evening News. Andy, you briefly mentioned then the Oldham Mill strategy. How is Greater Manchester going to build on that? Is it something that they would use as a framework and in other boroughs of Greater Manchester to protect mills elsewhere? And on mayoral development corporations, obviously you've mentioned Middleton, and if I'm right in remembering, you also mentioned Farnworth in your manifesto about potential locations. Could you go into a bit more detail about some other prospective locations and why places like Farnworth have been chosen for potential MDCs?
Thanks, Niall. I wonder whether actually Paul might want to come in first on the Oldham Mills strategy, because Paul's a little closer to it than me, probably, Niall. Then I'll pick up the MDC question. It's the only thing I would say is we are getting better at bringing mills back into use. There's one in Lee that I was quite involved in, Mather Lane Mill. We're looking at, I think it's Weir Mill, isn't it, in Stockport, which is part of the MDC. The difficulty often in the past has been the protections that have been put on these buildings via heritage bodies have then kind of made it hard then to bring them forward as viable schemes. But obviously we're working through those issues and there's real progress there. But Paul, shall I hand over that one to you, and then I'll pick up the MDC question after that?
Yeah, sure. No, thanks, Andy. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Obviously, the protections placed on buildings often mean that when it comes to doing anything with them, be that creating homes or creating places for work or employment, the costs can often be prohibitive. And we know in the north more generally we have significant viability challenges when schemes are brought forward, and we're asking the development community for contributions to Section 106, affordable housing, infrastructure investment, contributions to schools, green spaces, all the rest of it. The list goes on. But I think off the back of the work that's happening in Oldham, I think their mills strategy will provide a blueprint really for historic buildings across the city region in terms of how we can work with organisations like Historic England to actually bring forward schemes or fundraise around schemes. And I know in my own local authority at the moment, one of the buildings we've been grappling with for some time has been Buell Hill Mansion. And, you know, thankfully, I think, you know, we're going to be able to sort that over the next mayoral term, because we're going to use a kind of land receipt probably from another part of the city to actually restore that building. But I think there is a piece of work that can be done to, you know, learn from all of these initiatives and initiatives in the city of Manchester, really, to think about what is our strategic approach to heritage in the city region, and how can we learn from each other to raise the necessary funds to bring these absolutely fantastic buildings back into use. Because, you know, I think one of the things we all realise is how much people love these buildings that hark back to our industrial past, and, you know, architecturally they're absolutely fantastic assets and we should be utilising them. So yeah, I do think there is an opportunity to learn from the work in Oldham around their mills strategy and hopefully accelerate it across the city region. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Shall I jump back in on the NDC question, Ross? So
yes.
Niall, you're absolutely right. I have mentioned an NDC in the context of Middleton and Farnworth, or in both cases potentially a mayoral development zone, you know, whatever is deemed by the council to be the right vehicle. It's very much obviously for councils to decide whether or not to proceed with one. What I have done is just made it plain that I would be ready to support such an application should it be made. And I think we are saying that because we're encouraged by the experience of Stockport. You know, regenerating towns is a really hard thing to do, and I know there's a lot of talk about this nationally at the moment. You know, how do you regenerate the high street? How do you kind of lift a town that may be seen as one of the more forgotten places over recent times? I think Stockport provides an answer, and I think the leader of Stockport Council, Elise Wilson, deserves real credit for kind of showing that kind of vision, really, for what Stockport could be. And the thing about it is, you know, you help kind of drive the value of the whole place the more you link new housing to improved transport, green spaces, as we've been saying, cycling and walking infrastructure. You know, all of it becomes more than the sum of its parts when you kind of do it as a master plan, as opposed to just looking at schemes, you know, one by one in isolation, which I think, if we're honest, some of our towns have suffered from that form of piecemeal development over the years. It's about sort of reimagining them in a much wider sense. And of course, if we are to do that, it helps build the business case for taking, for instance, the tram through past the Northern Gateway to Middleton. You know, if you can lift the value of development by having a master plan, then of course it helps sustain the business case to bring transport to those places. I was in Farnworth not long ago. There is huge space there following the kind of demolition of the old parts of the old shopping centre. I think there's a huge appetite amongst local people to see the regeneration of the town, and certainly, you know, it'd be a matter for the leader of Bolton Council and the cabinet there. But obviously, I am ready to help with resources should that be the direction in which they want to go. I just think we are the first part of the country to, in my view, establish a successful template for how you link town centre regeneration to the building of affordable homes in those places, linked to public transport, and it's very much the direction in which Paul and I think Greater Manchester should be going. No longer building for the car. Car has been king here for too long, and you know, we all suffer as a result of that. It's time to build for public transport, and by doing so, breathe new life into our towns. And this Places for Everyone plan is very much about that.
Thanks, Andy. I'm going to see if Andrew Fletcher's had any luck with his microphone. If not, I do have Kevin Fitzpatrick's question ready to go. Andrew, if you can speak, please do. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read out Kevin Fitzpatrick's question. Andrew, if you put your question in the chat, I'll try and read it out. Kevin Fitzpatrick, two questions. First one is, can't see a figure for how many homes on the press release. How many are planned without Stockport's 18,000? And the second part of the question is, do you accept that some communities where fields will be lost will still be upset by these plans and against them? Paul, do you want to come in first on that one, unless Andy, you wanted to go?
I'll pick up the second part of that, Ross, when Paul's.
Yeah, no, happy to come in on the housing numbers. So I think it's just under 165,000 homes over a 16-year period. So that's the housing target figure we're working to in the plan of the 9 places for everyone. So yeah, and on the second point, I do want to say something on this. Absolutely, we've always been clear that, you know, protecting Greenbelt sits at the heart of what we're trying to achieve and deliver here. But we also know that just building high-rise apartments in the urban core, if you like, of Greater Manchester doesn't allow us to meet housing need. And I think one of the things that COVID has taught us is the importance of the home. And obviously, with the changing nature of work that's inevitably going to come off the back of COVID, people want homes. They want homes with gardens for their family and their loved ones. And, you know, delivering that is very much part of our thinking in terms of places for everyone. So, you know, unfortunately, we know that we can't meet our housing target or our housing need, shall we say, without releasing a small proportion of Greenbelt. But as has been highlighted, you know, even with this plan, 90% of the homes we're going to be building will be in urban areas, and there's been a 60% reduction in Greenbelt from the 2016 spatial plan. So, you know, as Mayor Burnham highlighted, we've really radically looked at this, and this is a radical redraft on what went before to deliver our housing targets. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. And I just want to add by saying that obviously we have listened, both of us, and we've worked with council leaders, and we've all done our best to reduce the Greenbelt take as much as we possibly can. However, clearly there will be some areas that are still disappointed by the plan, and this is where we just have to sometimes call out the opportunism we see in the local level with regard to the politics of all of this. You know, we are bound by government housing targets. You know, we can't opt in or opt out. You know, they are mandatory, and for those who try and campaign locally against them, but then are part of a government that imposes them nationally, well, you know, there's a lot of hypocrisy, I'm afraid, involved in taking that stance. What we're trying to do is manage those targets as best we can for Greater Manchester, and this is the point about a plan of the 9 as opposed to all 10 going it alone. The logic of it is, of course, we can allow some boroughs to build below their target because others are building above. So Bury, Trafford, Tameside, all of these are councils building below their housing target because of greater development in the urban core of the city region. So, you know, this plan actually, obviously it's challenging and it's never going to please everybody. But we believe we have listened and we've made it better for people on the back of listening to their concerns. And what we have tried to indicate today is a serious effort to offset the loss of some of the land by enhancing brownfields, such as at Mayfield, the scheme I mentioned at Victoria North, what we've seen at RHS Bridgewater, and across the city region and into those pocket parks, as I was explaining to Jen Williams. So, you know, we've heard loud and clear the message. We know how much people value green space. It couldn't be more obvious coming out of the pandemic that we need to do more, but we are going to do more. And overall, we think we've got the balance about right.
Thanks, Andy. I do have Andrew Fletcher for Granada's question, which I'll just read out. In relation to the nature of recovery part of the plans, the GM Birding City Region project is asking each borough to officially adopt a bird for marketing and ecology promotion, as American states do. Do Andy and Paul support this idea? And if they do, what will they do to make it happen? I don't know who wants to come to that one first.
I think I'll leave that one to Paul, because I can't say I've ever really thought about that, but maybe you have, Paul?
Yeah, no, this is something I am aware of. Yeah. Yeah, I am very supportive of it. I think that the challenge is how do we democratically arrive at what bird should represent what district? So yeah, absolutely. So and conversations at the moment in Salford with Salford Wildlife, for example, are ongoing about how we actually almost, hold a referendum really with the people of the city about what bird is it we want to represent the city of Salford. So there is a lot of work to do, I think, in this space, but I think in principle it sounds like a good idea, and it clearly demonstrates our commitment to wildlife as well within the city region. We talk a lot about greening and the green environment, but actually, we're creating habitats for wildlife, and in the not too distant future, there'll be mandations around increasing biodiversity when schemes come forward. All of this is really positive. So more we can do in this space of thinking about the importance of wildlife within the city region, I certainly welcome. I think the challenge becomes around this: how do you do it so there's a democratic mandate for whatever bird it is we arrive at as a city or as a local authority?
Thanks. Happy to move on to the next question from Sarah. At the moment, this is the last question, so unless colleagues want to raise their hands, we'll finish after this. Sarah, you should be able to unmute yourself now if you just say who you are and where you're from, please.
Hi, Sarah Collins from Global Radio. So in some areas, we're seeing a real crunch now, especially in hospitality, where they can't get the staff because there just isn't the affordable housing for them. What's the situation like in Greater Manchester at the moment? How will this help? And whilst we've got you, your thoughts on some of the scenes we saw last night, especially the graffiti on the Marcus Rashford mural.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So again, I'll invite Paul to come in after if Paul wants to add to what I've got to say. Firstly, you are absolutely right to identify the, in some places, chronic lack of truly affordable housing, and that being a barrier to our economy, supporting our economy by giving people homes that they can afford in all parts of the city region. So there are two strands to what we've got to do. Firstly, to improve the existing housing stock. We will be bringing forward shortly plans for a good landlord charter in Greater Manchester, which is intended to raise standards in the private rented sector, and also ensure fairness for tenants when it comes to rents and charges. So that will come forward soon. Paul took it recently through the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, so it is funded and it will be coming through. Alongside that, I was talking about making homes cheaper to run, and obviously the retrofitting programme is in essence a home improvement programme that will also in the end make homes more affordable for people, not the kind of upfront cost of the home so much as the cost of running those homes. So that is also part of our plan, as well as, of course, as building those 30,000 zero carbon homes for social rent. So as Paul was saying, none of this is easy, it's all challenging, but it is part of the long-term vision. With regard to the second part of your question, some of the scenes in and around Wembley were quite appalling, to be honest, an embarrassment to anyone who cares about football in this country, as I do very deeply, as you know. And with regard to the mural, what else can be said other than a despicable, shameful act? Just beyond belief, actually, that somebody would do that, given what Marcus Rashford has done, not just for this city region, but for the whole country. The joy he's brought to millions of people through his football, his talent, but also his commitment to the next generation of our country. What person could, in their right mind, do this is, as I say, it's beyond belief. And 99.9% of people in Greater Manchester, I feel absolutely sure in saying this, will be utterly appalled by it. and would want the strongest action taken if there is any evidence as to who actually did it. And finally, for those who've been asking why our players take the knee, I think they've got a very clear answer when they see just appalling racism of this kind.
Thanks, Andy. Paul, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just quickly on the affordable housing issue. We know for some time now that the housing market isn't delivering the homes that people need. Wages have been relatively stagnating, whereas property prices have been growing exponentially year on year, and therefore home ownership is so far out of reach for many people, especially the people you're concerned with, Sarah, in terms of those working in the hospitality industry, an industry we know which really suffers from insecure employment, part-time employment, and low pay. I think for me, though, as I said in my opening address, this strategy doesn't sit alone. It sits alongside the housing strategy. And in Greater Manchester, we've committed to building 50,000 affordable homes over the period of the plan. 30,000 of those we now want to be net zero carbon. Again, why? Because it helps people with their electricity bills. Electricity bills, utility bills at the moment are going the wrong way for many people year on year. But also at social rent, because we know at the moment rents within the private rented sector are extortionate, to be honest, for many people working in the hospitality industry. So hopefully working through with our partners, so housing associations, working with Homes England, working with the government's Affordable Homes programme, we can really now start to accelerate the delivery of truly affordable homes on all the various land allocations across Greater Manchester. As we said as well, 90% of the homes we're looking to build will be built in the urban area, and that includes those that are affordable homes and social rented homes. So I do think this plan, along with other plans as well within Greater Manchester, speaks very much to some of the issues facing workers within the hospitality sector in Greater Manchester. And then on the point of the graffiti on the Marcus Rashford mural, I agree with Andy. I think it's absolutely scandalous what's happened there. That has no place in Greater Manchester. It really doesn't. And those individuals who did that should feel utterly ashamed of themselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Paul and Andy, we don't have any more questions. So unless you've got a few final words, we can finish.
No, just to finish off then, Ross, I just want to firstly thank Paul actually for all of the leadership he's shown on this. It's a difficult issue, as people know, getting a spatial plan agreed, but this one we have is strong. It's visionary in many ways. Some things we haven't spoken about today are the 2028 commitment for zero carbon development more broadly. So, Greater Manchester is bringing on the future by bringing forward this plan. The policy position we took on fracking through the development of this plan, I think, also had a big bearing on that issue more broadly nationally. So we have through this plan, I think, taken quite principled positions, quite radical positions in many ways. And are, I think, shaping the future. So it's a thank you to Paul, but it's also a thank you to all of you for attending on a difficult day for us all, when we're all slightly down in the dumps. It's probably a day to look to the future and build a better future here. So we are confident now in what we're putting forward and what we're going to the public to say. Somebody asked before, will people be disappointed with sites still being in? I think it was Kevin. Well, of course they will. But we can say hand on heart that we've listened. We really have listened to communities across the city region, and we've made changes on the back of what they have said. And that is how we're taking forward devolution in Greater Manchester. We're not imposing things on people. We're not just sort of bulldozing things through. We are building from the bottom up. We do listen to people, and we are trying to kind of write our plans with people, and we think this is a good example of that and how we work. So just to say thank you to you all for tuning in today. We will now go out for that further round of public consultation, and we will want your support in making sure residents take part in it. But that's it, I think, Ross. Thanks everyone for attending. Paul, I don't know if did you want to add anything?
No, happy with that, Andy. Thank you.
Good stuff. Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.